was scared, just hiding behind my bed.
911. Just been a shooting. Just been a shooting? Who was shot? Who was shot?
The boy you just heard is 11-year-old Kevin Cooney. 5 minutes before this call was made, Kevin was at home, where he lived with his mother Linda and his little brother, Michael. Kevin was lying in his bed, his eyes closed, when he heard gunshots coming from the living room. 7 minutes later, his mother made this call to 911.
He's trying to kill me! Please, he's got a knife. My kids are in the closet. I got a gun. Please!
Hiding behind his bed that night, Kevin saw something he should never have seen. And at only 11 years old, he will become the only person who could reveal the real truth about what happened in the Cooney home.
All I could hear was screaming right outside.
The year is 1979. Linda and Jim Cooney have just gotten married. Soon after, they get two beautiful sons, Kevin and Michael. Jim works as an attorney, while Linda stays home with the kids.
And at first glance, you would think, hey, this is a perfect marriage, this is a storybook kind of relationship and family, but it turned tumultuous.
Jim and Linda divorce in 1988, and the kids stay with their mother. However, 4 years later, Jim files a legal action, seeking custody of Kevin and Michael. Little does Kevin know, he's about to witness something that will forever change the family's life for the worse.
Just been a shooting. Just been a shooting? Who was shot? What happened? What happened? I shot at him. I don't know if I got him or not.
Following the 911 call, police quickly arrive at the scene. Jim Cooney is laying dead on the floor, shot by his wife, Linda. She claims she shot him in self-defense. However, one thing doesn't quite make sense in her story.
One of the strangest things of the whole shooting was that you would think the first thing you do is you call 911. She doesn't call 911. Linda calls her lawyer first.
Only after she called the lawyer did she call 911 for help. As detectives look into the Cooney marriage and the possible causes of the shooting, Linda explains to the police that she was merely defending herself from her ex-husband, whom she claims was assaulting her with a knife.
The first thing we did was to take a look at Mr. Cooney's body and try and establish the direction of the gunshots, where they came from, how many there were.
The murder weapon appears to be a .357 Magnum. Jim was shot 3 times, with the third one going through the brain. With Linda's history of short temper, detectives are immediately suspicious of her.
There was a history of her acting out in violence, being manipulative. They were worried that this is something that she could have premeditated.
After a thorough investigation, it is revealed that Jim Cooney was sitting in the car when the first gunshot was fired. The story suggests that the gunshot came from the bedroom, intended to lure him inside.
It was my theory that the knife had been placed into his hand after he had been shot.
Following the murder, Jim's family and friends are completely devastated.
They had all the stories from relatives and loved ones showing that Linda reportedly threatened to kill him in the past.
Interestingly enough, a week before the murder, Linda and Jim had a conversation about his life insurance policy. Jim had a policy for $1 million, which could have been a motive behind the murder.
Ultimately, police thought they had enough evidence to take Linda to trial, so she was indicted by a grand jury, and she was set to go to trial.
Linda Cooney walks into court for her first appearance on a charge of first-degree murder. She turned herself in last night after grand jurors indicted her earlier in the day.
Ms. Cooney, do you have any comments on the indictment against you?
Linda and Jim's son, 11-year-old Kevin, insists he has witnessed the shooting. Interestingly, his accounts vary, creating a puzzle of conflicting stories.
In the beginning, he said there was nothing in the dad's hand, but then later on, it sort of hints that there was.
Subsequently, Linda is indicted for first-degree murder by the jury of Palm Beach and will stay in jail until the trial ends.
With Linda Cooney in jail and her ex-husband dead, there's no official word on what happens now to their 2 children, for whose custody they were battling.
However, her attorney gets her out by paying the bail, and they start to put together her defense. They are planning to portray this as a case of self-defense.
The shooting around which this case revolves was an act of self-defense. Ms. Cooney will enter a plea of not guilty at the appropriate time.
Finally, 1 year after the Cooney shooting, the trial is ready to start. Peter Magrino, the main prosecutor, starts by giving an opening statement.
On February the 7th, 1992, Jim Cooney went to pick up his two young sons for visitation. He was shot and killed by that defendant.
Following this, the defense attorney gives his statement, arguing that the murder was only the consequence of self-defense. What doesn't make sense to medical experts are the gunpowder particles found in Jim Cooney's hands.
If one hand is holding a weapon and one hand is not holding a weapon, you expect to see gunpowder tagging the palmar surface of this hand, but being protected from palmar surface of this hand by the presence of the weapon, if it was creating a shadow effect.
Subsequently, a police officer testifies that Linda came to him a few days before the murder, claiming her husband was going to try to kill her.
She then pointed to me and said, "I just want you to know, mark my words, in the next few days, Jim Cooney will try to kill me."
However, the officer never told anyone about this. Linda always mentioned the life insurance policy. This could, in fact, be a motive for murder.
She asked Jim if he had any life insurance, if his life insurance was still in effect, and he said yes. And she said, "Well, you know, Jim, if you were dead, the kids and I would have this money and we wouldn't have this kind of problem."
Finally, it is time for Kevin to reflect on what he saw that day.
What is it that you heard?
So I heard a loud noise that sounded like something fell. I yelled out, "Mom, are you okay?"
After you heard that loud noise, did you hear your dad say something?
I couldn't make out what it really was, but it sounded something like, "What is this?"
Children are often not viewed as the most reliable witnesses. They can be influenced, and they truly have the power to sway a jury's decision. In this instance, Kevin's testimony seems to have influenced the jury's verdict.
When you saw your mom in the hallway, what did you see in her hand?
I couldn't figure out what it was at first, but when she came in, I saw that it was a gun.
Following this, Kevin recounts about an object he saw in his dad's hand.
When you saw your dad at that point, what did you look at?
I saw something in his hand.
Was it dark or shiny?
It had a glary shine.
Could you really tell what it was?
No.
I think we lost the case at that point in time.
After witnessing a horrific incident, Kevin immediately called 911, trying to save his dad. As he was calling 911, he heard his mom screaming for help. In the meantime, Linda called her attorney. Only after did she call 911.
I believe his mother coached him to testify that his dad had a knife in his hand and was going to attack his mother.
After all the hearings, it is finally time for the jury to make their final decision. It takes them only a few hours to reach it.
State of Florida plaintiff versus Linda Cooney defendant. Verdict. We the jury find as follows. As to the defendant in this case, the defendant is not guilty.
Tragic. Devastating.
Is Linda Cooney a murderer?
No. No, I'm not. Definitely not.
What are you?
I'm a mother who defended herself and her children.
Linda Cooney is set free. However, 20 years after the murder of Jim Cooney, his son Kevin is shot by Linda with the same gun that killed his father.
My son has a gunshot wound to the neck. Kevin, are you all right?
And how did he get this wound?
Please send some.
How did he get this wound?
With her handgun.
Did somebody else shoot him, or did he do it himself? Hello? Hello? Hello?
As police officers rush to the scene, they can see 30-year-old Kevin Cooney barely alive, laying on the floor in a pool of blood. Kevin is immediately taken to the hospital, while Linda stays with the cops. As they interrogate her about what happened, they make a voice recording at the scene.
Miss Cooney, are you aware that this is being tape recorded?
Yes, sir.
Do you know how he got shot?
No.
Did you shoot Kevin?
No.
How in the world did your son get shot when only you two were in the house?
I don't know.
You don't know, or you don't want to know? Has he tried to hurt himself in the past? Has he ever tried to commit suicide in the past?
Never went through with it.
Okay, has he talked about it?
Yes.
Linda recounts that the 11-year-old boy who once testified to save his mother from being wrongfully convicted of murder has now become a troubled man. According to her, when he was not grappling with the thoughts of ending his own life, he was frighteningly threatening hers. She reveals that at 1 a.m. on June 28, 2011, Kevin attacked her during a heated argument.
He said he wished I was dead.
She told us he came around from the corner. He grabbed me. He threw me down.
Later, she went to sleep. She claims that she was sleeping and didn't hear any of the shots. When she woke up, she found Kevin laying in a pool of blood.
She seemed like a person who was trying to cover up what had happened.
Either Kevin hurt himself or you shot him. And that's what we're here trying to figure out.
The strangest thing is that the gun used to shoot Kevin is the same gun his father was killed with.
So you would think that that situation would be so traumatic for you that you would never want to see that weapon again.
This is all the information they have at the moment because Kevin is paralyzed and unconscious, and there is no one else to ask what happened.
Somebody has to tell the truth, and Linda Cooney wasn't doing that.
The apparent subject of the argument that led to the shooting was whether Kevin should move out and start living with his girlfriend, Karina Taylor, and Linda didn't quite like Karina.
She's an absolute psycho, and she will not leave Kevin alone, and Kevin is emotionally unstable as it is.
On the other side, Karina claims Linda was the psycho in this case.
I've lived in fear of this woman for a very long time.
Taylor started seeing Kevin back in 2011. She was climbing the ranks in the martial arts scene, whereas Kevin was working as a costume designer. During their relationship, she became aware of the fact that Kevin was afraid of his mother.
He had told me she had issues with his girlfriends in the past and that she was crazy and that she didn't like when he would date people.
Linda didn't quite like seeing her son with Karina, and she even warned her to stay away from the family.
She told me that their family would never accept me and stay away from our family.
But Linda didn't stop at that. She went even further to make sure Karina left Kevin.
She had expressed to me that she carried a handgun in her purse at all times, and she wanted me to know that.
But Karina isn't the only one who experienced threats from Linda. Clarita Kendall, Kevin's ex, claims she got one of the strangest calls from Linda during the time she dated Kevin.
It was one of the most bizarre conversations of my life. She calls me a gold digger. She tells me like I'm an Asian whore. And like I'm after this pot of gold that Kevin has.
But this was only the beginning. One night she was driving Kevin to his house. Linda pulled up in her car and started kicking her car. That's when Kendall decided she had had enough and called the police.
Her name is Linda Cooney. He's like right next to me. He won't let my car move. Listen. Sit here. I told you to stay away from him. Yes, your boyfriend, his girlfriend, or no, this is his mother.
She became obsessed with me. This was not stalking. She was hunting me.
Kendall says Linda was very protective of her sons and was determined to make sure they stayed with her. Prosecutors claim that after draining her ex-husband's $1 million life insurance policy, Linda relied financially on Kevin and his younger brother Christopher, and she wasn't going to let anyone take them from her. However, a Facebook post suggests he was ready to move out with Karina.
He says that he's got to be so careful about how he's going to separate himself from his mother. He's basically made the decision to leave.
Investigators believe Kevin told his mom he was leaving the house, and that's when Linda did the horrific to prevent it.
That was probably the final straw, that he told her, I'm out of here, and he meant it.
I believe that Kevin was downstairs, that she came down there with the .357, and she shot him.
While detectives are doing their best to find as much evidence as possible, Kevin wakes up from a coma 3 days after being shot.
When he wakes up, the first conscious words are, no, Mom, I'm afraid of Mom, Mom shot me.
Kevin isn't backing up his mom's story that this was just an accident. He repeats several times to the nurses that his mother tried to kill him.
He was very anxious and appeared to be scared.
3 months after Kevin Cooney's shooting, Linda is finally arrested and charged with attempted murder.
Vegas woman with local connections is accused of shooting her adult son in the neck. Linda Cooney is facing attempted murder charges and is set to appear in court in February.
We have Karina, Clarita, Nurse Luna, Nurse Johnson, Nurse Hatch, and Nurse Irvin, where Kevin makes the statements of, my mom shot me, I'm afraid of my mom, and then the forensic evidence and the physical evidence.
However, just a month later, something unexpected happens. Kevin changes his story, claiming that the shooting was just an accident.
He basically had said, I was an ass, and it was my fault.
Linda's attorney believes that Kevin attacked Linda and that she only acted in self-defense. Reports of abuse at the Cooney residence have persisted for years. Many calls to 911 have been made. Linda's attorney points out that Kevin's messages to his girlfriend reveal a different story.
You've got Facebook messages in print from Kevin where he's actively fantasizing about killing his mom. He also said that he had spit in his mother's face and that he was about to crack.
He describes it as a preview of the chaos that was about to take place inevitably. To support this story, there are also statements from the victim, Kevin Cooney, which might pose challenges for the prosecutors.
His first statement said it was an accident.
The prosecutors insist this claim was made only because Kevin was scared of his mother. Not only did Linda control who her son was dating, she also controlled his phone, putting a child block on his girlfriend's phone number.
She had the passwords. She was the one that could do the blocking of the texting or the phone calling. She controlled it. They had no control over it at all.
Even their rooms had no doors.
It's been going on for so long. The brainwashing, the manipulation, the control has happened since they were essentially little boys.
Linda's attorney points out that Linda may seem odd, but he suggests that could perhaps be the reason why Kevin snapped. On April 8, 2014, Linda Cooney stands before a judge again, more than 2 decades after her acquittal for the alleged murder of her former husband in Florida. Now she is in a Las Vegas courtroom, accused of the attempted murder of her son, Kevin Cooney. Prosecutor Michael Stoudehauer gives the opening statement.
Linda Cooney, the woman sitting right over there, will use fear, intimidation, manipulation, control, and one of the things that you'll hear that Linda Cooney wants is exclusive control of her children.
Following this, the defense attorney gives his statement.
The state would do everything possible to make you not like Linda Cooney. Kevin was to blame for his own injuries.
Subsequently, Kevin's 30-year-old brother, Christopher Cooney, is called to give his statement. That day, as Christopher was about to go home, his phone rang with a call from his mother. Their chat extended for almost 16 minutes, during which time, unbeknownst to Christopher, Kevin was fighting for his life.
I was trying to ask the questions like, where is he hit? What the hell happened? And I couldn't get a response from her.
In court, the prosecutors aimed to demonstrate that Linda's delay in dialing emergency services was critical, yet Christopher seemed intent on shifting all responsibility onto his brother.
If Kevin was upset or depressed because of whatever relationship woe he had, he would certainly carry it out on us. She did say that Kevin was threatening to kill her.
He explains that his mother thought Kevin was trying to reach the gun, which was in the living room, so she grabbed it first and dashed towards the door. At that moment, Kevin managed to wrestle it away from her.
The next thing she knew was bang, and Kevin went down.
I don't buy that Linda shot her son. I don't think there's any motive.
Following this, Kevin is ready to testify about what happened on the day of the shooting.
I was just in a rage. I was just so angry that night. I just beat the out of her. I beat her up. I told her I was gonna kill her. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm sorry.
This testimony is completely different from the one Kevin gave to the nurses in the hospital after waking up from the coma. The prosecutor thinks this is because Kevin wants to protect his mother from going to jail. Kevin is then asked to show the exact position of the gun.
Show me with your hand the exact position of the gun.
This, right here.
Kevin demonstrates the bullet coming from an upward angle. However, the medical experts don't agree with him.
It was slightly downward and slightly to the left.
Furthermore, over 20 witnesses are called to testify that Kevin had a fear of his mother. Among them are the nurses to whom Kevin testified that his mother shot him. Including this, the prosecutors are given permission to tell the jury about the murder of Jim Cooney, who was shot by his ex-wife, Linda. Following this, Clarita Kendall is called up to give her testimony.
Does he indicate at any time that she picked up or had a gun in her hand?
It was in her waistband. He said he started arguing with his mom, and he was sitting on the couch.
This could explain why the bullet came from the downward angle. Kevin is then called to testify in person. He now changes his story, trying to help his mom.
Which way was this gun pointed when it was fired?
Down.
Downward. Do you remember testifying Monday that it was pointed upwards?
No.
What if she still loves you? Would you want her around?
I certainly would like her around, yeah.
Is that why the angle of the trajectory has somehow changed from Monday to Friday?
What?
Given two completely different sides of Kevin, the jury isn't sure what to believe. Following this, both sides give the closing arguments.
When he wakes up, his first conscious words are what? I'm afraid of mom. No, mom, she shot me.
Linda had injuries that were inconsistent with anything other than having been attacked.
Only a day later, the jury comes up with their decision. The jurors convict Linda of attempted murder. They dismiss Kevin's claim that he accidentally shot himself. 3 months later, Linda comes to court for sentencing. There, she gives her final speech.
Unfortunately, my son Kevin carried with him an anger and rage disorder that he must have inherited from his father. Yet I always protected, defended, and loved my son, and I would never have intentionally harmed him. What happened was his fault. It was an accident. Please have mercy on me, Your Honor.
Finally, the judge sentences Linda Cooney to 13 to 40 years in jail. However, this is not where the story ends. Shortly after the sentencing, the sentence is overturned.
A judge ruled that information from her previous trial in which she was acquitted of the murder of James could not be brought up in this new attempted murder trial for Kevin. Linda was resentenced to parole.
This change in the narrative completely sets Linda free.
If this was a movie, I would say this is too unrealistic and I would turn it off. But this story really happened. Linda Cooney killed James and shot her son Kevin and was not held accountable for either crime.
In June 2022, Linda Cooney is released on parole. She now resides in Las Vegas, the same city where her sons, Kevin and Christopher, who is a police officer, live.